It was a bonanza Christmas for streaming services. Netflix just broke all streaming records with 2 NFL games on Christmas Day, even though there were blowouts, thanks in large part to a very special halftime performance. NBC News entertainment reporter Chloe Melas has more.
One, two, three, four. Beyonce bringing down the house during her NFL halftime performance on Netflix, dubbed Beyonce Bowl. The Grammy winner taking center field at NRG Stadium in her hometown of Houston, Texas, for a show that pulled out all the stops. From riding in on a white horse to surprise guests like Shabuzi and Post Malone. Even her daughter, Blue Ivy. Fans were quick to weigh in.
I'm shaking. Like, I'm literally in shambles.
All of the problems just feel dramatic. It was also the first time Beyonce performed songs off her Cowboy Carter album for a live audience, and the first Christmas Day games of a 3-year deal between Netflix and the NFL. Take it to the floor now. But in true Queen Bee fashion, the surprises didn't end. The singer posting the date January 14th on her Instagram.
January 14th! January 14th!
What does that mean? Is it the tour dates? It has to be, right?
Fans wondering what could be on the horizon. A superstar performance now leaving fans waiting for more. Chloe Melas, NBC News.
27 million people tuned in to watch Beyonce on Netflix, capping off a banner year for streaming services. There were more NFL games than ever streamed exclusively this year. Hollywood studios recalibrated their movie launches to capitalize on big streaming numbers, and cord cutting caused major ripples through traditional broadcast and cable networks. So what does this all mean for the future of TV, and what does it mean for consumers? Tyler Aquilina is a media analyst for Variety Intelligence Platform, primarily covering the streaming wars, and he joins me now. Tyler, I just want to say there are not many people who can get me to watch a 50-minute TED Talk, but yours was fantastic about streaming, so I'm very much looking forward to this conversation this evening. I'll start with this.
Thank you.
We've been talking about cord cutting for years now. We've been talking about the fact that more and more Americans are saying, well, I don't want to deal with this cable. I don't want to deal with that cable. But we've also been talking about the rise in prices for streaming. Are things like Beyonce concerts and football games the way that streamers are trying to justify raising their prices, or was this just an inevitable change we were going to see in the business?
Well, I don't know that it was inevitable per se. I do think that Netflix had to get to a point where they were going to be offering something a little bit more than what they have offered to consumers for, obviously more than a decade now. They've been moving pretty aggressively into live events. I'm sure we all remember the Jake Paul and Mike Tyson fight just a month ago. And Netflix really surprised everybody, I think, by pulling off these NFL broadcasts without all of the technical glitches that marred the boxing broadcast. So, in terms of inevitability, I think that, it was necessary for Netflix to start moving more into this space. I don't know that the migration of the NFL and sporting events necessarily had to happen that fast, but it was definitely going to happen eventually.
Yes, it was a painful day. I was a Steelers fan. I didn't want to watch much after the first game. The other question I have is we see more and more live sports moving to streaming events. You've got NBC that's carrying Premier League. You've got the NBA is moving to different streaming platforms. One of the concerns that a lot of consumers have is like, well, wait a minute. I may not be able to see my local team as much if they're being caught up on these streamers. Is there a concern that as more of these sort of pay-to-play streamers get involved in sports, that fans will have actually fewer choices without paying extra to see their local teams or the teams they've grown up with?
That is certainly a risk of this model. I think, the NFL still has policies that require them to broadcast games free to air in local markets. But, if you're, say, a Raiders fan who doesn't live in one of the local markets for that team, maybe that's a bad example because I think they broadcast in several markets. But if you're a fan who, lives outside of the region where your team plays, certainly this is a problem that they've already faced, with having access to these broadcasts. But in a way now there's maybe a little bit more flexibility, if you're a fan of a team and it's being carried on Thursday Night Football, for example, all you need is an Amazon Prime subscription to access that. You don't need to be in the market where the game is being broadcast, or, you don't need to worry as much about all the kind of arcane regional broadcasters where these games have been broadcast before. But the point is that it certainly is getting more complicated in terms of knowing where to find the sports that you want to find. Whenever I'm writing about NFL games now, I always have to remind myself, like, which streamer carries which package now. It used to be just a matter of, Monday Night Football's on ESPN or ABC, and CBS will have the Sunday afternoon games, NBC has Thursday Night Football, things like that. And now it's a lot more splintered, which is, has really been the name of the game in the streaming era. We're seeing a fracturing of a content landscape that used to be much more unified.
So there was a report just came out, UCLA, talking about, again, surprise, the lack of diversity behind the camera as far as producers, directors, and writers when it comes to content across all sort of streamers. And you've been writing about the fact that many of the streamers are also going to be pulling back on producing content. We've gone past peak TV. We're now at the point where we're getting less content. What might that foretell in the next 2 or 3 years when it comes to shows that are led by women, shows that are led by Black people, shows that are led by the Latino population? Because those audiences are there, and they're hungering for shows like Cross, and they're hungering for shows like The Madness and Lupin. But it seems like the streamers are producing less and less of those programs.
Yeah, this is a really interesting and thorny question. I mean, I think in the post-peak TV era, what I'm expecting is we're going to be streamers leaning a lot harder into what are called 4-quadrant shows, which is to say titles that Hollywood believes appeal to just the widest possible audience. Historically, that has been, a not so subtle euphemism for the whitest possible audience. Shows led by, Caucasian leads and things like that. But there is a dual pathway going on here, because one thing that we've also seen is that these truly global streamers like Netflix and Amazon Prime Video have been more willing to invest in international content, content from around the world, a lot of different countries, which means that you may see increased diversity in terms of representation from Asian
like international
countries.
programming.
Yes, exactly right.
Wonderful. We are up against a hard stop. Tyler Aquilina, thank you so much. It was great having you on the show this evening.